Welcome to the first of two BEAD-funded Connect Illinois application assistance webinars, and U of I Extension's happy to have Devin Bronstein from the Illinois Office of Broadband here with Shubika Agrawal from the Illinois Broadband Lab. We're really grateful for this assistance-oriented webinar, and without further comment from me, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. And is everyone seeing my slides?
Looks good.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for confirming. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Devin Bronstein. I lead the Illinois Office of Broadband, and today we are going to be focusing on a templates deep dive. So as folks are preparing their applications for the second wave of the BEAD-funded Connect Illinois Round 4, there are a series of templates that applicants will need to complete to make sure those applications are accurate and done as they should be for us to be able to review. So wanted to break that down between today and tomorrow's noon webinars. We'll give an overview and then do direct demonstrations of some of those more involved templates. So I'll be presenting today with my colleague Shubika. And without further ado, let's dive in. With the one caveat that I am coming to you live from the Fiber Connect conference. And so if my volume or internet gets a little shaky, someone can just please give me a heads up and I'll do what I can to adjust. Okay, so we'll start with a recap of BEAD progress to date. This will be a review for folks who were on the call last week, but just want to make sure everyone kind of has the basics there. Then I'll provide some slides that give an overview of the key tools that you'll need to apply for Illinois' BEAD program, and then we'll hand it over to Shubika for a live demo. All right. So as folks likely know by now, BEAD stands for the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. It is a federal program administered out of NTIA, $42.45 billion that will go towards connecting all unserved and underserved locations across the nation, as well as connecting community anchor institutions to gigabit symmetrical service. So Illinois was allocated $1.04 billion of this nationwide allocation to achieve this goal on the statewide level. And we are making our way through our subgrantee selection process. So we started with completing various NTIA requirements, including drafting an initial proposal that outlines how our processes will be run. We ran a statewide mapping challenge process to receive feedback on our data and make sure that we had as up-to-date of a map as possible. Ran a request for input process, pre-qualification process over the summer, and are now in our second wave of our subgrantee selection process. So we are accepting applications from now through July 16th for this second wave, after wrapping up our first application wave last week following a window that ended on February 26th. So our first application wave had two requirements for participation. Projects had to be end-to-end fiber, as well as have a subset of hard-to-serve project area units. And now in wave two, we will score all reliable broadband service applications. So that includes fiber, hybrid, licensed fixed wireless, licensed by rule, and a few others there. So kind of walk through this. We are in wave two now. In wave two, we will also establish our extremely high cost per location thresholds, which is the threshold above which the state has the option to select non-fiber projects over fiber projects. But any fiber projects will have the opportunity to come into compliance with that threshold before we put it out on the open market. And then another recap item, PAUs are project area units. These are the building blocks of our application. So kind of the smallest unit that you can apply for. A couple of other key definitions here. We have a broadband serviceable location, which is any business or household that is eligible for BEAD funding. a community anchor institution, which are hospitals, schools, libraries. There's kind of a subset that are eligible for the BEAD program. And then on the right-hand side here, you can see what it actually looks like on our map, which we'll demo in just a little bit. So what is our universe of locations that we will be connecting? We have around 175,000 locations that are eligible to be connected for the BEAD program. So you can see that all of the pink on the map are our number one priority. These are the unserved locations, followed by the blue locations on the map. These are the underserved locations, also a top priority to be connected through the BEAD program. And then finally, everything green on the map already have service. And so our goal is to turn the map fully green. All right. And in total, we do have over 3,300 community anchor institutions to be connected through this program. Another flag that we talked through last week is that we do have just over 10,000 locations that we received evidence as no longer requiring BEAD funding. And so you'll see these also marked on the map today. So there are three components of the application. The first is the entity submission form. So any entity who applies kind of submits this. You can think of it like a profile, and we'll ask for information about your organization, mainly to help ensure that you meet qualifications for the BEAD program. If you've already applied in wave one, no need to submit this entity form again. You'll just want to make sure that you have all of your qualifications up to date. So if you had outstanding feedback, we'll need to make sure that that is closed out. The second is the project submission form. So after you complete your entity form, we'll need you to complete one project form per application. So you can submit one application for several PAUs, or you can submit several applications kind of based on your application strategy. And then finally, after you complete the entity submission form and project submission form, you'll get an identifier for both. And the application will be considered complete once you submit this sort of final form. It'll ask you for both of those numbers. And that is what we will look for by the 5 p.m. deadline on July 16th. So just to provide a visual for what I described, the entity submission form is here. It's just like a standard form. There will be some fields that are required, some attachments that are required. So relatively straightforward, but we have office hours every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. And we are more than happy to walk you through any piece of this or answer your questions. Similarly, the project submission form looks kind of similar, but you'll provide details related to your specific project. And then finally, the application submission form, where you'll put just basic information about the applicant and then those two IDs, which are called an EFS ID and a PFS ID. So the main thing that we would like to focus on today is the templates. So this slide shows all of the kind of buckets of qualifications that are required to be awarded a project under the BEAD program. And then those in orange are qualifications that include a template. And the purpose of us using templates is really just to standardize and streamline the information that's coming in. So it helps us review your applications in a swifter, more streamlined way. And it avoids back and forth, additional data collection, things like that. So if you did apply in the first wave, we've made some tweaks to make sure that the application templates are as efficient and clear as they can be in this second wave. If you participated in the pre-qualification process and received a letter at the end of it indicating which qualifications you were approved for, You do not need to resubmit information with the exception of any RDOF or CAF2 updates, which I'll talk about on an upcoming slide. You'll just indicate which qualifications you want us to reference from your pre-quals, and we'll kind of go back to that. But if you were not approved for any of those pre-quals, we will need additional information to make sure that we can get all of the entity information finalized. So a reminder, if you did participate in the optional pre-qualification process over the summer, this is the letter that you had received. And you can see in section 1 for qualifications A through G, the qualifications that our office approved you for are listed out to the right of the colon. And then you'll see an opportunity in the form, in the entity form, to indicate in the pre-qualifications process section. You'll indicate yes to this question that asks, did you participate in pre-qualification? Then you'll list your pre-qualification participant ID, which again is on the letter that you received from us, the final determination letter. It'll be an ID that starts with PPQ. And then finally, you'll check off the qualifications that you did receive pre-approval for. So you'll want to look at your letter and then have this form up and check off the qualifications that you received pre-approval for and you are not submitting new information for. If you have updated information that you'd like to submit, you can just not check off that box and we will look out for updated information from you. So this is the full list of templates, and today we'll walk through a subset of these templates. The ownership information template, the existing broadband projects template, and then we'll do kind of a deeper dive on the project area selection sheet template and project timeline template, and I'll give more higher level overviews of the other two. And I see some questions coming through the chat, so just know that we will have time for questions at the end of the session. All right, so the first template is the ownership information template. This should be very straightforward. This is a requirement from NTIA for us to understand the ownership information for your applying entity. So you'll see instructions here for you to fill in relevant information about the parties who own your organization, percent of interest owned, and various associated information. The next template is the existing broadband projects template. So we ask for information about RDOF and CAF2 federal awards, kind of standard information about these projects, as well as updates on where you're at with your milestones. And the main information, or the main reason why we collect this information, is because BEAD awards have lots of federal requirements, and we want to make sure that all of our applicants are sort of equipped with the bandwidth, technical operational qualifications to carry out their BEAD programs successfully. And so understanding your progress and preparedness with your other federal investments will kind of be a good indicator of that. So this is just kind of information for us to be equipped to have those conversations with you. If you filled out this template during the pre-qualification phase, we do just ask that you share an updated version, since it has been, I think, around 9 or 10 months since that happened over the summer. And so you'll see a couple of tabs that prompt you for information, some of which you can see on this slide. This is one of the templates that Shubika will demo shortly, but this is our standard project timeline template, which collects descriptions about your project milestones, and then when you will be going about the different parts of your build out. So you'll see the milestones on the left. We'll ask for a description of those details, and then, rough dates. Should you be awarded on, this date, when would you initiate project planning, network design, etc. And something else to highlight here is that our scoring rubric does award points for projects that are completed within 2 years of signing a grant agreement. So this is the place to make sure that if you are claiming that your project will be complete in 2 years, you'll want that to line up with your project timeline template. Every project also requires a professional engineer certification or PE certification. So we have a standard template available online that lists out what exactly we're expecting the PE to certify on. And there's an opportunity for them to fill in their license, their name, and then stamp this document. So this is a requirement for your application. And then finally, the letter of credit. So a letter of credit from a financial institution is ultimately required for a grant award. So while we don't expect a letter of credit at this point, what we do require is a commitment letter from the financial institution who will be ultimately issuing the letter of credit. So the commitment letter should be from this institution and essentially commit to adhering to this letter of credit if and when the time comes that the project is awarded, and they would need to support by issuing this letter of credit. There is a letter of credit waiver opportunity, and we have a separate webinar that I can link to in our recap to walk you through what is that waiver and how might you take advantage of it, who's eligible, etc. So again, the requirement for the application is just the commitment to provide the letter of credit. So we just look for that commitment to meet the requirements laid out in the model letter of credit that we provide online. And before I dive into the project area selection tool, wanted to share that all of these templates are linked both in our application guidebook, which lists out every application question with the associated template link. And they're also linked in the application form in Airtable. So we do recommend completing everything ahead of time, kind of saving it in a folder on your local computer, share drive, and then prepping everything to submit all at once, as our application portal is not one where you can kind of create an account and save progress. We're a little bit limited on the technology here at the state. And so it is kind of a one-time form that you'll submit, upload all of the information. So we do recommend compiling everything kind of separately on the side. All right, I'm going to walk through some slides and then we'll hand it over to Shubika for a live demo in just a few minutes. So one of the first things that folks will start with is actually looking for which locations are eligible to be connected through Illinois' BEAD program and compiling your application on our tool online. Okay, so this is our project area selection tool. So when you go into the tool, you'll see a couple of different layers here on the side. And this is essentially describing the symbology of the tool. So first you'll see the aggregate areas, the eligible locations, ineligible locations, and high cost areas. So one initial kind of definition to share is when we talk about a PAU or project area unit, it is a collection of eligible locations for the BEAD program that are all assigned a PAU ID. So at its core, PAUs are just a collection of locations. For a visual aid, we have overlaid those PAUs, those collections of locations, with hexagons. And so when you go into the tool, you'll be able to click on both the individual locations as well as the hexagons to kind of navigate through the tool. You'll also see, moving down to eligible locations here, that some of them are colors and some of them are in black. Colors indicates membership of the same PAU. So if you see a cluster of blue, a cluster of green, this means that those locations belong to the same PAU. Any black dots or triangles mean that BEAD funding is no longer required. So we underwent a serviceability updates process over the winter, and if we received qualifying evidence that indicates that the locations no longer require BEAD funding, then the locations are marked as black on the map, and you'll kind of see them listed out separately. So if you're applying for one of these PAUs, you are not obligated to include those locations in your application. A couple of other highlights here. Ineligible locations, or those that are considered served, we do have available if you are interested in seeing them, and they're marked as red circles on the map. Just know that when you download the PAUs, they will not be included in your totals. And then high cost areas are NTIA designations that cost above average to serve. Project areas consisting of only PAUs in high cost areas are exempt from the minimum 25% match requirement. And so when you use the tool, you can toggle on and off each of these layers. So when you get into the tool, you'll kind of zoom in and you can search for a location in the search bar, either a zip code, an address, a county, or this is a new feature from last time. You can check this box to click search by PAU ID, and that allows you to zoom in directly to a PAU. Here you can see kind of a similar summary of what I just shared before, and a new coloring from last time is now these dark gray hexagonal areas indicate that this is an area that was preliminarily awarded in the previous wave, so will not be selectable at this time. Any PAUs that are against this light gray background are still available, and so you can select those and add them to your cart. Our second tab here just gives a summary of PAUs as you're navigating around the map. And once you're navigating around the map, what you'll want to do is select the PAU that you're interested in including in your project portfolio. You'll click it, it'll turn this light shade of yellow, and then you can click on Add to My PAUs, and this will essentially add it to what we like to call your shopping cart. Another symbology differentiation to include here is striped hexagons. This means that there might be more than one set of PAUs that happen to share the same hexagonal area. If this is confusing, you're welcome to unselect the PAU aggregate areas, which are again, just kind of a visual aid, the hexagons in the background of the eligible locations. But what this means is that there is more than one cluster of locations that share the same PAU ID in the same hexagon. There's also a tool available where you can bulk select PAUs using the lasso tool. So you can click in the top right, this navy hand, and then drag and drop a kind of lasso or, a circle, a shape that you create to select PAUs in bulk. If you end up bulk selecting a PAU that lives in one of these shared hexagons, you'll have the opportunity to clarify whether you did intend to select both PAUs that share the hexagon or just one. And so you can click the PAU IDs that come up on the top right to select or deselect. And the final tab on the project area selection tool shows just kind of like summary information about what you've selected. So it'll show you the total number of PAUs, the breakdown of underserved, unserved, and community anchor institutions, and the total. And now it'll also tell you the number of locations where BEAD funding is no longer required. So you're not, confused about why you're seeing those dots on the map, but you know that they are not a part of your BEAD obligation. So I skipped ahead. And then finally, every PAU has an associated reference cost, which is based on a cost quest model. The reference cost comes into play because when we are scoring applications, we'll essentially look at how close or far the proposed BEAD outlay or requested BEAD funding is from that reference cost and award points accordingly. And this is pretty scientific, so the exact formula is available in our application guidebook. An important point here is that once you add a handful of PAUs to your project area, we're only looking at the total reference cross. So the sum across your entire. And if that's the case, I would suggest selecting the star so it'll be marked as must have. And what this means tactically is that when we are going through a process called deconfliction, meaning auto de-scoping projects, if there was a nearby or overlapping higher scoring project, we would not automatically de-scope this PAU from your project. We would kick it back to you and have you tell us, these certain PAUs are no longer available. So you tell us which ones you are still interested in. And finally, this tool is kind of an online interactive tool, but to finalize something for your application, we will ask you to click the floppy disk button here to download and save your PAUs as a CSV. There's also the ability to upload a previously saved CSV to continue where you left off. So let's say you wanted to save your work, you would download that CSV, and then you can come back a day, a week later, re-upload it to kind of continue where you left off. The 4 square table here allows you to view things in a table format. And then if you want to start over after you're playing around or you complete one application, you can click this fourth button here, delete all PAUs from your My PAUs here. And with that, I will hand it over to Shabika to walk us through the project area selection template.
Awesome. Thanks, Devin. So we'll start off with a few slides here on what the template looks like and then go into the live demo, which kind of works with the project area selection tool and the project area selection sheet together. So this is one of the templates that's required as part of the submission, does not require PE certification, but is a required template. It helps us get information about all of the locations that you want to serve as part of your project in a standardized form. And it towards the end, we'll see there's also a summary sheet, which you're also seeing on the screenshot here on the left, which helps us get a high-level statistics on the project type, the number of PSLs connected by different technologies that you'll be selecting, the number of CAIs, the reference cost as we had seen earlier, and also help us get a sense of a few gating criteria here with Wave 2 and beyond. It's just the number of not unserved or underserved locations, meaning any like based on the BEAD requirements, an applicant is able to include up to 20% of served locations as part of their proposal. So if the number of locations selected is less than 20, it would say threshold met and your application would be good to go ahead and be evaluated. But if it is greater than 20%, then it would not meet the threshold, and essentially you'll have to like reduce the number of served locations that have been included. And this would just be locations that are included as part of the proposal where you are requesting for BEAD funding. There are other metrics in the pro forma where you're able to report locations that you would essentially pass because you're not able to avoid which are already served. So that is slightly different from what we are requesting here with the not unserved or underserved locations that you would require BEAD funding for. Moving on to the next slide, this gives us a little more detail into the different things that we'll see in the summary tab in the project area selection sheet. So firstly, starting off with the project type, As I'd mentioned, what kind of technology is going to be deployed? Is it fiber, non-fiber, or any kind of alternative technology? This is currently based on the existing definitions for the three types moving forward based on any changes that we received through the policy notice that would mean a change in terminology potentially. Then there's also the whether or not the project meets the threshold for the not unserved or underserved or the served locations included, which is the 20% threshold. The PAUs selected, so the total number of PAUs and what is the total reference cost for those is going to show up in the next section. Moving ahead, we have different categories for sorry, back to the previous slide, Devin. Yeah. So the total number of BSLs selected, which is the number of eligible unserved and underserved BSLs. And here you'll see a differentiation between the ones that are actually eligible and the ones that have now been categorized as no BEAD. So they'll show up as a separate cell in here. And then we have the served locations included in here as well. And you'll see that we kind of distinguish between BSLs and CAIs at this stage. So towards the end, you'll be able to see the total number of eligible CAI selected. And again, with that, there's a distinction between the total and the no BEAD ones, which would be ineligible for BEAD funding. And in the middle section here, we have the breakdown of all of the BSLs by different technology type. Again, this is going to be based on the selection made in the tool. And we don't have that distinction for CAIs because per BEAD guidelines, all CAIs have to be connected by gigabit symmetric speeds, which as far as we know, it's only through fiber. So again, we do not have that distinction for CAIs that will be selected as part of the project. Yeah, in the next slide here, as we mentioned, you will have the opportunity to select the technology that you wish to deploy for each of the PAUs that you've selected as part of your project area. We'll take a closer look at this in the demo as well, but we list out all of the different technologies in here. And for each of the PAUs that shows up as different rows, we're able to select the technology you would like to deploy. Again, with Wave 2, you're also able to submit other reliable technology and even like alternate technology applications. So that is the reason we also have another tab for mixed tech technology. So if it's a larger PAU where the applicant wishes to deploy a mix of taking a closer look at as well. So I think with that, we can move into the live demo and I can share my screen. So step one is essentially we'll be starting off with the PAU selection tool, which helps us get all of the information in the standardized format as we need it for the project area selection tool. So as soon as we enter this specific tool, it shows us a splash screen with some basic instructions on how it works, which had also gone through previously as Devin was going through the slides for this. There's also our contact details and our website information in here, which can be helpful. Okay, so moving on, I'll just open the floor for a little bit if we have like a specific area that folks would like to look at on the map, or I can just zoom into a specific area on the map and get started with the demo. So I'll give it a second to see if somebody responds with a specific area in the chat.
Anyone have a zip code or a town, county?
Or a PAU ID if you
We love
share
volunteers.
something.
All right, we got one, Shabika.
Okay, awesome. 61610. So we just have the zip codes. I'm gonna enter that in here. It says Creve Coeur, Illinois, USA. So as soon as we type that in, it zooms into that specific area on the map. As we can see, I'll walk you through the different layers on here again. So all of these light gray hexes that we see on here are still available, and the collection of these essentially create a PAU, which is the project area unit. If you would like click over some of these, you get information about the PAU, the unserved and underserved counts, the community anchor institutions, if there are any no BEAD locations or like locations that do not require BEAD funding in there, again, we do not see any black dots or triangles in here. So that's why it says 0. So it has a total of 2 locations and the reference cost for this PAU. So you can also just move your cursor around and it shows you a dialog box with the information, or you can specifically click and that gives you a sense of what's the extent of the project area unit, what are the hexes, what are the locations, and things like that. Here on the right is one example that also includes no bead locations because we see a few black dots in there. So you can zoom in a little bit if you're interested in a specific PAU to take a look at the locations. Also click at the locations. So we first see the PAU information, and then there's the toggle information sign here. We're able to zoom into a specific location and see the existing status in location ID and address for these. So that covers the PAUs and the locations. And as we'd seen previously, even in this area, there are certain dark gray project area units that have already been preliminarily awarded as part of Phase 1. So you can still certainly click on those and get the high level summary statistics for number of locations, but it would say that it has been awarded preliminarily in Wave 1. And so you'll not be able to add it to your PAUs as part of this submission. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use the lasso tool, or maybe let's add a few without the lasso tool. So how we would do that is just again clicking on the PAU. You could select add to my PAUs, and if it's just a few of them, this certainly works. But if it's a larger area where you want to be serving all of those PAUs that you see in the extent, you can click on the hand icon here, which activates the lasso tool, then draw the area that you're interested in. You can certainly still select the darker gray in your lasso, but they will not be activated through the tool and not be added to your cart essentially. So we've made these selections. You click on add to my PAUs, and that is then going to show up in the my PAUs tab. As we can see, there's some high level statistics on. We've selected 49 PAUs covering a total of 327 locations. This does not have any community anchor institutions. Out of these 327, there are 13 that are categorized as BEAD not required or no BEAD locations. And then there's also the reference cost for all of the PAUs selected. So you can go over this list, and I assume a lot of times you would be working on a separate software to identify the PAUs and then be working with this software to generate the list of PAUs for the project area template. So you might have a sense of which ones to include as must have or not. Or the other way, once you have selected bulk PAUs, you can essentially click on the PAU ID on here to zoom into that specific one and see the number of locations and where exactly it falls in your project area to make a better sense of whether or not you want to include it as a must-have. So having done that for this demo, we'll just walk through a few more where we're able to zoom in and maybe add this as a must-have. And again, this depends totally on your business case and your understanding of which PAUs you certainly want to have in order to make your project feasible. Because there might be instances where there are other applications that also overlap with your project area, and decisions are going to be based on scoring, the costs, and all of those different factors. So it'll be helpful for us to have an understanding of which ones are super essential for your project and that way we can make a final decision on which one to proceed with. So I've made a few dummy selections for must-haves by selecting the orange star there. You're also able to verify some of this by just looking at it in a table format, if that's helpful. And again, you'll see the ones that are no bead required will essentially have a 0 or 1 in the no bead required column. So we see a few ones showing up here. And we have must-have stars as well. So once you've made your selection, you're pretty comfortable with what you've selected, and you have your final list. What you would do is select, scroll to the top up here, and save this as a CSV. This is going to be required for your next step with the project area template sheet. So I'm saving it in my demo folder for now. Again, you can have a separate folder for each of the applications that you're creating. So I have my CSV. I have also downloaded the project area selection sheet, but I can also walk you through where exactly this is at. So if you go to the subgrantee selection sheet, landing page on the IOB website, you will be able to find the application guidebook. Just right here. I already have that opened in one of my tabs. And towards the end of this guidebook in the appendix, this is where we have links to all of the templates. And again, I did see a question in the chat previously for whether or not there were updates. There are quite a few updates to the project area selection sheet that we'll be walking through. The proforma is now required and does have some changes. The timeline sheet has also been improved a little bit. So we would definitely recommend that you go in here and download the latest as you're working on your Wave 2 submission. So for the project area selection sheet, it's the PA2 template. There's a link to download. Select open link. And that downloads it for you. I already had a copy on my system. So now for the next steps, you'll need your project area selection sheet and the CSV that you'd exported from the map in order to carry out the next steps. And the good thing about each of these templates is we have detailed instructions on all of these. So you can always revisit the recording to see next steps, or there's also a good amount of details in here that can walk you through what's exactly supposed to be done. The first step would be, see again, as I mentioned, the instructions that go through all of the different tabs and what's requested in each of those. High level is in here. You'd start off with the applicant information, pretty standard with what is aligned in your entity form submission as well. And then move on to the raw data input. This is where we will need the CSV export from the project area selection tool. And we also have a link to the tool in here. So what we're essentially supposed to do is, let me make sure I have that open. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We've made sure that the columns align between the CSV export and the template. So you would just skip over row 1, which has all of the headers, and Control Shift all of the values in here and to the bottom. So that's a total of 327 rows. And we can also see how we can validate that, the export is right. So firstly, I'll go in and paste this in cell B8 so that it aligns with the format here. So we did see that we have 327 rows, and a quick way to validate that would just be, going back to the project area tool, and in the locations summary tab, you'll be able to see how many total locations you should have in your export. So this shows up right. We should have a total of 327, and then there would essentially be 13 no-bead rows in that export. So we will look at that once we look at the data in the summary sheet as well. Once you have copied and pasted all of that information into the raw data input, you don't have to make any changes here. Just leave it as is and move on to the next tab, which is the PAUs tab. This essentially aggregates all of the input from the previous raw data input tab and gives you a list of the PAUs that you've selected. with basic stats on eligible BSLs, CAIs, the total locations, the number of no bead locations, whether or not you selected a yes or no for the must include category. And then this is where you're supposed to be making a selection for the different technology types. And there are again detailed instructions on the top here. We discussed reliable and non-reliable technology previously. So there's also a good detailed and text here on what those different categories include. So reliable technology includes fiber, coax, hybrid, fiber coax, licensed fixed wireless, licensed by rule, and copper wire. And then there are also the other technology types that are listed under non-reliable and the alternate technologies. So you will have all of that information here, and you're expected to make your technology selections in column H. So starting off with, again, this can be a mix, but this can be a mix essentially of different technology types, but you'd have to make a selection based on what you'd like to deploy. So we're accepting all types of technology starting wave two, and it's only the reliable technology ones that are going to be evaluated, but still welcome all of the other ones as well. So for the purposes of this demo, just selecting fiber, license fixed wireless for a few of these. If you were to select other in here, the cell in column I lights up because we'll need information about the technology that will be deployed. So that's just a note. If you select other, provide more information in I, otherwise that would still remain an invalid row. For this demo, just selecting license fixed wireless for a bunch of these, and then we'll select a mix of technology as well for some of these towards the end. So the key task here would be, again, no changes to any of the other columns except for H and I. Making selections for the technology based on the PAU IDs. And for some of these, maybe for example, that have like 30 locations, I want to go with a mix of reliable technology. And for one that has 11, I'd say maybe I want to do a uh, sorry, mix of reliable and non-reliable. So this is again just for purposes of this demonstration. Could certainly depend on the different kinds of technologies that you want to deploy and what makes most sense. Um, so just completing this sheet so that we can move on to the next one. So if you have any instances where you've selected a mix of reliable technology or mix of reliable and non-reliable technology, so this is where we'll need more information on what are specific locations that are going to be covered by the different technologies. That is when you go on to the PAU's mix tab, mix tech tab. A lot of these will be gray because we've selected fiber or licensed fixed wireless for those. But you'll see that the ones where we selected mix of reliable or non-reliable, those turn up yellow. So those are the ones that need additional input. So you'll see the PAU ID in column B, the total number of eligible locations in column C. So based on your selection, this is going to make sure that the technology selected is accurate and also the number of locations add up to the total number of eligible locations. So you also want to look at the technology types, which are listed on here: fiber, coax, licensed fixed wireless, and so on. So for my first PAU NOV 2006, I have selected a mix of reliable and non-reliable technology. I'm supposed to be filling out all of these in order to make this a complete submission. So, for example, if I wanted to be a mix of fiber, I would say 3 locations fiber. That leaves me with 8. So, and I want to deploy the others with unlicensed is considered as non-reliable based on existing guidance. So it still says pending BSL count input. So this is a good flag. We just need to make sure that all of the others are 0 for it to process all of the values and then let us know whether or not this is an accurate submission. So it says valid input. So even if you did not wish to deploy any of the others, we just want to make sure that you input zeros in those and your count adds up to the number of eligible locations so that it is able to validate the submission. Mix of reliable technology with a total of 30 locations. So if I say 15 here and 0, 0, can't take a while. And if I were to include 15 and unlicensed for this one, it would show up as an error because unlicensed is a non-reliable technology and we've only selected reliable. So I'll go ahead and make this a 0. And I actually wanted to deploy license by rule. I'll say 15 there, and that completes my input here. So again, make sure that all of those are valid inputs, they add up, and the information is accurately filled out. There's the additional locations tab. So if you want to include any of the up to 20% served locations, you're able to do so here. They should still be in the hexagons of like PAUs that you've already selected. There's more information here, but you'll be requested to put in the location ID, the PAU ID, the hex number, and the technology that you wish to deploy at any additional served locations that you choose to include. And all of that information is summarized here. So because there are some mixed technologies as well, it shows up as alternate technology, meets the 20% threshold. We have the PAUs and the reference cost information, the number of BSLs, split by technology as well. And because this did not have any CAIs, that's still 0. So that is the project area selection template. Definitely the big changes here being the mixed tech edition and the addition of the no bead required locations on here. We're close to the end here, but I would also like to quickly demo the project area timeline sheet. It is pretty similar to the previous version. With just a few notes in order to familiarize you with that. Again, this is also available in the appendix of the application guidebook, so you can download it there. As I'd mentioned previously, a good set of instructions for you to look at to make sense of what's supposed to be included in here. Also includes the applicant information tab. And this is the tab that requires input from the applicant for the specific project, the timeline. For each of these milestones that we have on here, there's also the glossary tab, which gives us more information about what's supposed to be done in each of these milestones. And based on that, there's also a description tab for the applicant to put in additional information about what they will be doing in these specific periods of time. Essentially, this is based on an input using months. So you'll start off with the month that you will start work in. This is not tied to specific dates on the calendar, but just assuming that after grant execution, starting month 1, let me just enable editing. And there's also like help text in here for you to make sense of what to input. So starting month 1, I will start with my detailed project planning, and column E is where you fill out how many months you will need to carry out that task. So I'll say I need 4 months to do this. So all of that is now hatched from 1 to 4 for detailed project planning. You could say that I will also simultaneously start with my network design in month 2, and I will need, say, 5 months for that. This is just me using dummy numbers, but based on your input, it just populates those specific months in the calendar, and that goes on until subscriber activations and program closeout submission. The one distinction that we also make is if you are kind of aware that you're going to have multiple projects and you would not essentially start until, say, month 4 of grant execution. So you could start off with 4 here and continue with all of your timeline. And I'll just skip through all of these, and towards the end, I will say program closeout happens towards the end. I'll probably start 22 and with no 2 months for that. So now you'll see there's like 2 distinct numbers here. The first one shows up as 20, which is the actual project duration. That is because it excludes the first 3 months where you'll not be doing any work after grant execution. So that's why that's 20. And the other one still shows up as 23 because after grant execution, you will essentially need 23 months in order to complete all of your work. So that's a new distinction that we have added in here, just depending on when you will actually start working on the project, and you're able to like make that distinction based on when you start with the project milestones after grant execution. So that wraps up the timeline template as well, and we can now open for questions.
Thanks, Shabika. I tried to answer some live in the chat, which I can walk through verbally, but first let's see if there's any new questions that folks have, and if so, please put those in the chat. I see a question. Can you bid on a PAU in 2 projects? If so, could one technology be submitted on project 1 and a different technology on project 2? Yes, so this stipulation is in our guidebook and our NOFO. You can bid on a PAU more than once, only if those bids are for different technologies. So if you wanted to submit one bid for fiber and one for fixed wireless, that is allowable. But you cannot submit 2 bids using the same technologies. All right, and I will touch upon some of the questions we've clarified in the chat. So updates on templates from wave 1 to wave 2. These are listed in the slides from our kickoff meeting last week, which are available online. I have put those in the chat, the link in the chat, but it's linked off of our website. You'll see our full page of past webinars. Another comment shares that the PAU selection tool has been freezing, and just know that we experience that on some browsers and devices and not others. So we are working with our vendor to make sure that it works seamlessly for everyone across all devices and browsers. So we are on it, but if you have further details or an example, screenshots, don't hesitate to send that our way. And we have a question, should additional pre-application information submitted in wave 2 need to be submitted, or submitted in wave 1 need to be submitted again in wave 2? So if you received a preliminary award in wave 1, your entity form is all set. If you were rolled over to wave 2 or did not receive an award and there is something outstanding, we will likely follow up directly with you as we're going into wave 2 reviews. But if you know that something is outstanding, feel free to send that our way and we can incorporate it in your application for consideration for wave 2. And I am not seeing any other questions. So I'll just take these last few minutes to plug a couple of resources. I'm going to put some links in the chat here. So we have office hours right after this at 1 p.m. Central every Tuesday and Thursday. And if you are new to the process, we would love to help you navigate the PAU tool, fill out the templates. We are here to support. And then I will send out all these links in an email after the fact. But here we have our website link. And this is the best place for you to check out all of our links, the rules, the templates, anything at all that you need will be right here coming in the chat now. So the project area selection tool is there, in addition to the link to join office hours, which are on Zoom. And office hours are intended to be for one-on-one questions. So we'll keep folks in the waiting room, let them in one at a time, take you into a breakout room as needed and walk you through your questions. So, if it's confidential, specific to your application, you'll just be with our team directly. Any final questions? Okay, and then next week, please tune in again, or apologies, tomorrow, please tune in again. We have three important template reviews. We'll be going over the budget sheet, the pro forma template, and the fixed wireless template. So we'll have technical experts walking through each of those and would love to hear your questions and support you as you fill those out. So if that's it, we are at the top of the hour and appreciate everyone's time. All right. Take care, everyone.